now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Kimberly King, co-founder of today's event, one that had the vision for the franchise for humanity. Kimberly is an internationally recognized social entrepreneur, a CEO of multiple companies, an advisor to the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, a specialist in strategic alliances and public-private partnerships, and my favorite, a global advocate for human rights, women, and girls. She's also a speaker, an author, and a dialogue convener. She's traveled and worked in nearly 70 countries, and most importantly to my heart, really one of the most prestigious awards I've ever heard of, the honored recipient of the Eleanor Roosevelt Humanitarian Award. Would you please help me welcome Kimberly King?
Let me start first by invoking another quality. We started the day from Maylin's invitation and others to come together with joy, that's the most important ingredient, or certainly a galvanizing ingredient. I'd like to invoke another that we all know is a pillar and an essential, and that's gratitude. So I want to start with some gratitude for all that has brought each of us the journeys, as Maylin said. Everyone understands that we are on the journey of a lifetime, and our lifetimes intersect. And really, more than a buzzword, it is our day to get that again. Not for the first time and not for the last time, but for another time that can maybe make a difference. I want to thank Maylin Song for the vision of her journey that brought us here. I want to thank Victor Huang for the Global Innovation Summit that started a week-long conversation that is rippling out into the world. We're one of the ripples, and there are many. I want to thank Marge Etheridge for being part of the inspiration that birthed term for a conversation today and much more called Franchise for Humanity. And Franchise for Humanity for today and hopefully beyond, what I hope it will do is hold a sense of cohesion about that scalability, about that shareability that we're in this room to talk about today. Not cookie cutter, not sameness, but impact beyond measure. What does it mean to be one who impacts many, and many who remembers the value of one? That is not a contradiction, it is a paradox. And it is a gateway to everything magical, everything powerful, everything significant. I've had the privilege of being in many auspicious rooms like this one. Not that this one is any less, this is a special room. I've not been to Silicon Valley to connect these dots before, where the power of the greatest innovator, inventor, the Mecca for many, actually dares to put on a screen at the Global Innovation Summit the words fear and love. In Silicon Valley, I was amazed and I was thrilled, because if we can't come down to those fundamentals, we don't get it, no matter how many PhDs we have after our name. Because it is never more or less clear than what is driving us and what can save us are in a profound relationship, and that's part of the journey we're on, is to understand how to transcend that in ourselves and really come together in a way that humankind has only barely glimpsed or imagined before. I do want to say, while I appreciate the tremendous introduction that Denise gave, I don't for 1 minute think that I transformed any industry or any company. And any of you who are out there listening that work with those industries or companies, I didn't say that. It's Hollywood. But I did have the privilege of stepping into points of time where companies and industries had to reimagine themselves. And they had fears. They had chaos. They had lots of unknown, and they had big stakes. They had big stakes. and the individuals involved. And what I know that every time, the first thing that happened was lots of butting heads and agendas and everything else we could name. And somehow, something that emerged from that was a vision greater than ourselves, and that was really the key to turning the ship. There are so many stories I want to share, and I have to say, many of the points that were made already give us a rich soil, literally, to talk about. But I think what comes to mind now that I'd like to share is about 15 years ago, maybe longer, I took a trip to Brussels to spend some time. It was the first time I really did something called global leadership, because frankly, Americans weren't as global as the rest of the world. So I had the opportunity to go and be a listener in that idea. And one of the facilitators and leaders of this forum was Bennis. And he was a professor and is a professor still, and author and leadership guru, especially in that time, very prevalent work and still important. But he wrote a book called Organizing Genius. And I thought, that sounds good. Don't you organize genius? But when I looked inside what he'd written, it was even more compelling and more exciting, because he said this was a study, he and his co-author, and I'm sorry I'm not recalling her name, it's a woman and a brilliant woman. Please look up the book, it's a good book. But in Organizing Genius, what they studied was great groups. And the way they defined great groups was groups that came together for a moment in time and made a dent in the universe. And I'm like, that's my tribe right there. I want to be part of a great group that comes together in a moment of time and makes a dent in the universe. What does that mean? Well, as you see in the case studies in the book, they traverse the breadth from animation at Disney Studios to the first personal computers to the Manhattan Project and lots of things in between. So you can make a cartoon or you can make a bomb. You can make a computer or you can make a cure for tuberculosis. You can do whatever you want. But what did they have in common? The animators and the nuclear. What did they all have in common across? Because it wasn't sector-based, it wasn't era-based. What was it? And although we can't go into all the points today, I think what I'd like to challenge us for is the first foremost common denominator for great groups that make a dent in the universe and change the world is that they recognize that they come together around something greater than themselves. And usually it's a team of eagles, by the way. Groups that make a dent in the universe are not a bunch of hangers-on, lazy, happened by, they got free coffee here, I think I'll stop. Great groups recognize themselves in a call. They are usually leaders in their own right with big strengths, big egos, big reach, big cojones. Can you say that on mic? Sorry about that. But these are people with big wingspan and lots to bring to the table. And they're used to maybe kind of having their own table. Can you hear a little challenge emerging? Great groups are usually assembles eagles of eagles. It is a grand call to the best and brightest, which does not mean, by the way, most educated, richest. Best and brightest is an inside journey. It usually has some outside evidence, but that by itself is not evidence of the call. But teams of eagles, when they come together, when they hear that call, the first thing they need to do is figure out how to share the sky. And they're not usually used to it. And I would tell you that I love being at the forefront, at the birthing, at the forging. These are my favorite places to be. I have many friends, and circles like this are happening around the world, lest we be so haughty as to think that we're inventing that today. We are not. We stand on the shoulders of many, of all the others. But today is our moment. The next 2 days are our moment. But I want to tell you that it isn't. We have bright minds in here who know a solution around food, around transportation, about health, every sector we can name. And I'm a meta strategist. I sit where the intersections of intersections come, and it's a glorious view. But here's what I know. If all it took was to be smart and bright and in the same room, we'd have already done it. I convened a team of leaders at Omega Institute a few years ago. This happened to be women leaders. And the question we held is, what is this awesome power that we hold, and what is our responsibility to it? What would we do if we knew we could not fail? And what is standing in our way? You've heard the phrase, I've seen the enemy. The enemy's us. I have seen the hope, and the hope is us. We are one and the same. The enemy is that fear that keeps us separate, that makes us walk back out of this room lone eagles instead of a constellation of hope for the world. I love today we move further. We fly farther. There's an African proverb I'll end with that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. And boy, is that true. But if you want to go far, go together. It's the only way. We are the only way through. And we is harder than it looks and closer than you think. Let's go there together.